Got this
No worries. Okay.
Starcy
So
spotlight on.
we are doing daddy interviews for Father's Day, and we are interviewing Mario. And he's going to answer some questions on how it feels to be a dad, and especially to be a dad to a little girl, and how that might have changed his thought processes and everything. So, love to introduce you to Mario. Mario, how are you?
I am
Um,
fantastic, tired but good.
as we are on a Friday night, I appreciate you taking the time.
No worries.
Um, quick question. It's usually when I'm starting off with most of the dads. What was your first thought when you were told that you were going to be having a daughter?
Um, I mean, I was happy either way, quite honestly. But like after the joy, the kind of within almost a millisecond comes the worry of
Right.
being a dad and having to deal with, oh boy, there's like a whole bunch of like daughter stuff I'm gonna have to deal with as she grows up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you definitely feel there's a distinct difference between having a girl and having a boy.
I think so. And as much as I don't want to be kind of uh, I don't know, presumptuous about anything, and maybe it's my upbringing or whatever. But yeah, it's still kind of one of those things where girls are just um, uh, maybe more open or susceptible to situations that they would rather not be in.
Okay. So what role do you think you play now, um, even though your daughter is small? What role do you play now in her life that you find is maybe the most challenging for you?
So that just repeat that last bit.
What role that you're playing in your daughter's life right now, being that she's a young child still, do
Hmm.
you find that might be particularly challenging to you? Like, what part of that role of dad do you find challenging at this point in time?
I mean, honestly, at this point, like she's still really, really young, so she's not really communicating verbally and not fully understanding, obviously, the context of all of our conversations. So um, it's almost like you're on a constant, they're sponges. And when they don't pick up words and conversations, they're picking up atmosphere and tone and body language and behavior, right? So
Right.
all of those things are, for me, are kind of critical. So it's like when you're a kid or something and you end up going you end up at a wedding maybe and you get seated at the same table as the priest. Everything you do, you're kind of conscious of kind of what's he going to think. So
Right.
in kind of the same way, um, how I treat her mom,
Hmm.
uh, whether I get annoyed or raise my voice or all of that kind of stuff, you'll do something and then you'll kind of bite your lip and just go, I shouldn't have done that, or
Yeah.
you'll maybe react to kind of, and it's happened recently. I've stubbed my toe and I've gone really loudly, ow, and she just started crying because she thought she did something to me because she
Right.
was kind of standing there. So
Okay.
every little thing
Yep.
that you do is scrutinized. It's
It's
what it
kind of
is. Like,
amplified, isn't it?
what's that?
It's kind of amplified so that what you might deem as something small, just like you were saying, stub your toe, and she thinks she's done something wrong.
Well, exactly. And unlike maybe an older child or an adult, um, you can't even talk your way out of it. The way you've reacted is the way you've reacted.
Yeah,
That's it. It's pretty much kind of black or white.
true. So how do you see that changing maybe 20 years from now? How do you anticipate you might be around her or react to her?
Um, you know, it's kind of I've now I'm constantly on the lookout for kind of how older parents or father figures have kind of dealt with having um, bringing up girls. Um, just because I'm kind of from my perspective, I'm there's a little bit of a fright that sets in, but I'd like to be, I'd like to find that fine line between being a kind of a friend or a confidant, but you know, understanding that that's never fully going to happen. Especially as she hits kind of teenagers, it doesn't matter how cool a dad you are, you're going to be kind of lame at some point. So I just want to find that I want to find that balancing line where I still have the respect or I'm able to kind of deliver advice without pontificating because you don't want to you really don't want to preach to kids because I was a kid as well, and all you end up hearing is blah blah blah, and nothing really nothing gets absorbed.
Right.
Um, but I want to kind of keep that channel of communication open because as much as I mean, I don't know if she would ever turn to me, but I'd like her to always feel like she can talk to me or her mom about anything because it's when they start hiding stuff that the real problems begin.
Right. And that communication is very, very important. How do you think you would let her know, especially as she creeps into the teenage years, that you are that person that she can turn to?
Well, um, and 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 I think once again it's kind of a behavioral thing to a large degree because you know if the first time she does something you don't like or you let her go to the movies with her friends and something happens and you have an absolute freak out, that's right there laid the foundation, right? It's laid the foundation for, well, next time if I do go to the movies and I do this, dad is not going to find out because he's going to freak out, and that's where it starts. So it's all about kind of trying to handle any incoming news or information in a way that you're like, okay, even though this is scaring the bejesus out of me right now, and I want to flip out, I'm not going to because I will never kind of. It's going to be really difficult to recreate that first opportunity again, and it's going to be a constant from a little lie about going to a movie to a little lie about boys being at a party to whatever it is. It sets a foundation right there, and you just know those boundaries are going to be pushed. And I'd like to think that I will react in the right way. You know, God knows, I probably will not end up doing it all of the time, but
You're
um,
human.
yeah, we're human, but it's not about like kids aren't dumb, and it's all about its body language and its reaction more than the words. And if your words are just empty, then forget about it.
Well, and I think you're setting a great foundation for her by making sure that you are conscious of your body language, because that is that you, the first communicator with little ones. You know, they do, and they are so sensitive to all of that. And knowing and being around your daughter, I know that she is sensitive to that stuff. She picks up on stuff very quickly. She's a very smart, intelligent little girl, and do you take those questions that you might have? Obviously, I know you talk about them with your partner, but do you talk about them with your parents? Do you talk about those challenges of parenting with your own parents?
Um, a little bit, but it's such a generational thing. Like my
Yeah.
dad is so old school that um, he thinks a number of ways. He thinks we coddle her too much. He thinks maybe we're not firm enough, or this is how it is, and you go to bed whenever it's convenient for us to go to bed, not at your preset bedtime because you're running our lives and not, that shouldn't be like that. He's very much kind of from that generation, but at the same time, if I speak to my mom, kind of the amount of times my dad actually um, was kind of concerned about our bedtime was pretty much never because, growing up in we were all born in Eastern Europe, and he's kind of that's just the thing, the woman stayed at home, looked after the kids, he went to the factories, did
Right.
did whatever he needed to do, brought home the proverbial bacon, and that was his role, and my mom's role was the kids. So my mom is kind of she's on the other side where every one of her grandkids is a saint. So um, anything they do or whatever. She's just like they just chill and they'll learn. It'll be fine. And you're exhausted and your child's being, let's just say, being fairly difficult and everything's being thrown around and there's hissy fits and it's just kind of like it's okay. She'll get better. Maybe her teeth are bothering her. Something like that. There's always a so two very different approaches, but whether either is particularly effective, um, I don't know. But certainly, kind of growing up, because my parents were so different, I know personally for me which approach worked. My dad was the iron fist,
Right.
and my mom was very much kind of just the quiet respect thing. So whereas my dad, I would try and avoid doing stuff just because there would be consequences, whether it was kind of a smack on the bum or whatever. With
Right.
my mom, the consequence was she would be disappointed if I did that. So it was almost
Right.
kind of this personal guilt thing that is so much worse than any corporal punishment you can ever get. So
Right. It's the whole psychological thing.
yeah, and not that she was playing any particular psychological games. It was just kind of this was her, and even to this day, I don't want to disappoint her, but I recall her raising her voice at me like ever.
Okay.
So there's definitely
So
two
her
different
fist was
approaches. And
stronger.
what's that?
I said, so her fist was stronger.
Yeah, it was the fist and the velvet glove. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So what do you think would be a goal or an aspiration that you would want for your daughter?
Um,
A
my
lifelong
daughter,
goal, not just immediate.
like long term.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I want what most parents want. You want your kid to grow up and be um, smart and independent and free to feel like she can do anything that she really puts her mind to and all of that kind of stuff. Um, so I mean, I think I want what any parent wants is possibly the best, but uh, I want her to be. It's not just a success thing. I want her to be a good person.
And see, that's not always what parents say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parents that will list off, I want them to be a lawyer, a doctor, this, and it's all based off of that. And all the emotional attachment stuff comes secondary. So it's wonderful to hear that you put that as a priority.
Yeah, no, it's something, I've always been raised to be cognizant of other people and my wife as well, to a large degree. And it's not always about looking after number one. And you hear so many stories about kind of current generational, even the Y generation, where it's kind of what's in it for me. And I would really, really be disappointed if that's all that kind of came out of, 20 years of raising this person and this is what it ends up being. I'd be kind of shattered because to an extent it would have failed.
Yeah. What kind of legacy do you think you would be passing on to your daughter?
Um,
What do
Nothing
you
for nothing. It's like an old saying, right? But I,
Well, what do you think, when that time comes that she would be able to say, my dad was dot, dot, dot? What do you think
um,
she would say?
my dad was a good example.
Good
Good
answer.
example. My dad was the sort of person I would like to be. So not about my dad was rich,
Yep.
fine. My dad was funny, fine. But it's about my dad taught me to be the best person I could be. That's what I want to say.
Wonderful. And I think you're laying great foundations for her to be able to do that because you're showing and leading by example, which some fathers unfortunately don't always set the bad example. I'm unfortunately one of those people who have grown up without having a great example of a dad, and that's why I'm taking this time to shine a light on it and show some great dads that I know that are either single or in a relationship or whatever the scenario might be, or they might even be in a same-sex marriage. The point is that they are giving their daughter the respect and the upbringing that they deserve. Um, I'm seeing so many things and so many articles these days about female children being mishandled and mistreated and not respected enough as a human being. So, highlighting throughout this series that I'm doing, dads from different cultures and different upbringings, and understanding, you might have been raised in a certain scenario, but how are you now raising your child, especially living here in Canada? Things are different in this country than they are in other countries. There's a lot of opportunity for women to do a lot of great things in North America, but you have to lay the foundation.
Yeah,
And me, like,
yeah, I'd like to think that. Yeah.
you know, um, when you knew that you were going to be having a child, did it give you this sense of fear that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be taking care of another human being?
Um, yeah, it's almost like you go through cycles where sometimes you just kind of you you're fairly numb and you kind of my wife's belly is growing and I understand the biology of it and I understand that there's a person that there's this baby being born in
It's
there.
not an alien. It's not a puppy.
Yeah, no. Sometimes it feels like it's an alien, but um, there's no manual. These kids don't come with a manual, and I honestly I think that a lot of people say you go to your prenatal classes and this stuff, but nothing really prepares you. Forget those prenatal classes because um, from day one, the nurses at the hospital like this is your baby right now from day one. There's no okay for the first 3 days we are here and the baby's in this other room and the nurse brings her in and showers her. They show you once. This is how you bathe her. This is how the diaper goes on. And here you go. We understand you've been in labor. We understand that dad, you've been sleeping on a chair for like 4 days. But this baby's yours. Enjoy. And I think it's at that moment that you 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 and your well me and my wife we would kind of try and not scare the living poop out of each other by going, I have no idea what we're doing. We just kind of give these knowing looks. Oh, it's probably gas. Oh, okay, let's try this. Okay, let's try that. It was always kind of one of these. We think it's this. We think this is the answer, and sometimes you just don't know the answer. And at 3 in the morning you're phoning kind of telehealth or whatever it is because you just have no idea and you're at a loss. But there's always in the back of my mind, there's like, you know what? You're certainly not the first people to go through this. You will not be the last to go through this. Um, your parents went through this, and God knows they went through it with like 4 kids, and their parents went through it with, I don't know, 9, 13 kids, whatever it was. So um, there must be some sort of a biological thing that just kind of kicks in, and you go, okay, I'm going to take care of stuff. I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm not whatever, but stuff gets done. And your priorities shift.
Yeah, there is no manual that can cover everything because everything is just too much. And there's different scenarios for every scenario that might come into play depending on where you are and if you happen to be traveling with your child, that changes the script all over again. How important is it for you, obviously knowing both you and your wife, you like to travel? How has it been taking your child on a trip and experiencing that and maybe perhaps seeing what she might be seeing, or at least attempting to see what you think she's seeing?
Um, I mean, for us, it was important from two aspects. I mean, we love traveling, so maybe there was a little bit of I don't know, selfishness or something. I don't know. We wanted to try. I'm sure there's a lot of brave parents out there that go, you know what, our lives aren't going to change, but your life changes regardless. But what we wanted to do was we didn't want to kind of say, well, our lives will stop dead for the next 15 years, and we will only ever go to Disneyland and come home. And we we tried to kind of okay, this is not who we are. This is never who we were, and we wanted to kind of. we wanted to give Junior kind of. I mean, these experiences not something that I think she'll necessarily remember, but we didn't want her to be uh, get too attached to having the same environment, same surroundings all the time. We didn't want it to be that kid that was so coddled that the first time that they're going to kind of a JK or whatever and are surrounded by other kids that they freak out. So, she handled it like a trooper. We've been to 4 countries with her, 4 separate trips, and it always kind of it's one of my kind of unwritten rules. But when you're the most fearful that something is going to go wrong, it generally does. Like I was a little bit frightened of the first trip because you just don't know what's going to go on. You read,
Right.
you do the research, you read the blogs, and some of the advice, quite frankly, is ridiculous because they basically recommend that you pack up half of your belongings and ship them all with you, and you've got a playpen and you've got this and you've got that for every eventuality. And we went to 7 cities in 12 days. There was no way that we were partying around all of this stuff. And you know what? She was fine. She adapted. She got through jet lag. She got through a time change because we were in Europe. She was fine. It's when we thought we got into a comfort zone. We were like, yeah, we can handle this. This is our fourth flight. That's when stuff really just went berserk, and there's just no controlling them. And the tough thing for me was not so much handling the baby, but handling other people on a plane. Um, it's like they don't realize that we're parents to this young child, and guess what? We don't enjoy the screaming either, and we would very much like it to stop just as much as you. We promise you. We're not encouraging the screaming. We understand it's a 4 or 5 hour flight. Let's try get through this because it's that anxiety and then the kids sense it and they freak out even more. So the last trip was, we looked at each other and said, we're not doing this again. But within 3 weeks, we're like, okay, so how do we do our next trip? So it takes a little bit more planning, and we're considering going somewhere for our anniversary later this year, and just trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this with a kid? Because it kind of puts the kibosh on having any civilized dinners, and you're eating at 5:30 or 6 p.m., which is if you're going to Europe is is going to be a late lunch more than a dinner. But
Right.
and it's one of those things we want to try and carry on living our lives as different as they might be, and as she grows up, give her an appreciation for things because I think kids feed off whatever you give them. So people that have kids that are picky eaters at the age of 12 have picky eaters because from the age of 4 they've eaten their adult food and then they've given the kiddies meal, and when the kid wants to go know what's on dad's plate, you're like, you know what, you're not going to like asparagus. So guess what? The kid doesn't like asparagus, and it's your fault. Period. The kid's going to have to learn to like asparagus. So in the same way, I think we see travel and kind of when people say kids are going to hate museums, they're going to hate this, they're going to hate that. I don't know. I want to try. I want to, if I'm in Rome and you're in the Colosseum, and it depends on if you're showing your kid a pile of rocks, they might be pretty bored by a pile of rocks. But if you explain that this pile of rocks, that there were lions coming in, and there were huge battles going on, and this and that, I don't think there's an 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid that's not going to appreciate, wow, there's all this crazy stuff happening.
Yeah.
So, and I think that'll be the better for it than kind of every 2 years going to see Minnie Mouse. I'm not saying we're not going to go see Minnie Mouse, but that's not going to be the extent of what we do for travel.
Well, and that's only going to put her personal development at a certain level, right? You sound like you have a great plan to expand her exposure to the world and make her more worldly far sooner than most parents really try to, because they think it's unattainable. I think people really put limits on their parenting with their kids because they're just so fearful that's not what the book said or that's not what so and so recommended. And they forget that those are guides. They're
Yeah,
not manuals. You're supposed to take and edit and develop through that. And every child's different. You can't put the same plan of action on every single child. And
absolutely. And that's almost the problem in the information age, that there's too much information.
yeah,
And, sometimes you just have to go, you know what, I'm switching off, because if 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 you get your child is sick and you take three symptoms, they range in degree from this kid needs to be rushed to an ICU to this kid's just got a runny nose. You
right.
just don't know, and as a worried parent, you assume the worst, and that's when you start spreading. So yeah, a guide's a guide, but um, those people also had to go through things. Whoever wrote those guides presumably had experiences that those were their experiences, and we hope to make ours. And as an adult, when I deal with other adults, um, there's a distinct difference in. It doesn't matter at kind of what level you're dealing with people, but almost intellectually, or when you're having discussions, people that have seen the world,
Hmm.
they interact differently, they see things differently,
Yeah,
they have a much wider reference point to somebody that hasn't left their hometown ever in their lives. Like, this is your reference point, this and whatever you're watching TV. It's it's such a disadvantage, I think. It's like learning another language, which we're trying to kind of speak all kinds of languages, and it's slowing down how quickly she develops her own speaking. We understand that, but at the same time, at some point, we hope to have a trilingual person who, languages open doors,
yeah,
pure and
definitely.
simple, and travel does as well.
Very much so. So how do you think? Now this is one to go for the heartstrings, and I'm definitely not trying to trying to push too hard, but how will you or how do you think you will allow another male to take up a large part of your daughter's heart? I know it's early days for you, but
Ah,
it could be the crush she has on the little boy at daycare. It could be, because that's your little girl. That's an extension of your heart. And how do you facilitate allowing that to happen?
yeah, and I mean, you're right. It is early days, and um, if I said to you I have a plan in place, I'd be an absolute liar. Um, so part of the thing is you want them to make you want them to have the opportunity to make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? You don't want them to make mistakes that are going to hurt them in any kind of permanent way. So I believe people have to kind of learn to cope with things like rejection, and there's a whole myriad of emotions that people have to face, because and it's tough, as a parent it's going to be tough to watch your kid be miserable, but you know what, I went through this, and I kind of survived intact. And you go through days where you're moping and it's the end of the world because you didn't get a letter back, or whatever it is. And um, it just gives you a reference point, because I think people that have not been allowed to be in those situations um, make mistakes that are much graver later in their kind of teen years, or their early adulthood. they they make mistakes that they didn't have the opportunity to make, small mistakes, and they make kind of humongous ones, because this is this is the first person that's paid any attention to them that they know how to deal with. And it's the wrong person, but it's somebody. So um, I mean, this is the head speaking, right? The heart might be a different thing, and I mean, there's going to be ground rules in terms of dating and stuff like that. There's going to have to be. It's just um, it's going to be difficult to kind of find those boundaries, and I might have to lean on mom a little bit more in those perspectives, because being a woman, she went through all of this. She went through the hardships of of trying to argue a curfew at the age of 17 or trying to go to a movie,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and she will know better than I do how it made her feel or what it made her tempt to do. Um, so yeah, there's going to have to be a whole whack of discussion, but um, and maybe I'm old school in that way, but yeah, I'm not into kind of, oh, my 9-year-old's going on a date. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
don't
I think
think.
it's very valuable for a young woman, especially, um, to be able to talk to her dad about what might be going on in a boy's brain. What might be going on in that male brain, because you are the closest person that she's got, and she can recognize that you went through a relationship with her mother to create her. So there's some history there for you to know, and some confidence maybe for her to have, that okay, if I really want to have this open conversation, not necessarily just about sex, but about relationship and being involved with someone, that you would be her best resource.
Yeah, and there was a friend of ours, James, and he had he has, but back then they were in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and they had very frank discussions, and his daughters would he had two daughters, and they would come to him, and they would tell him what was going on in school, and they would there was some pretty scary stuff going on in high school. Girls trying to kind of earn their badges, so to speak,
Right.
and I always kind of find it amazing. They felt that they could talk to him about it, and he goes, "I've got to be okay, even if I, on a very superficial level, am okay with what they're telling me, because it's when they stop telling you stuff that you really need to start worrying."
Exactly.
So, yeah, keeping that communication open, I mean, it's going to be crucial. It's going to be tough as all get out, because you know, I'm seeing what's going on now just kind of via the news or whatever. So I can only imagine how much further along down the path technology and all of that kind of stuff would have evolved. So yeah, there's going to be some crazy stuff going on in like whatever 10, 15 years time. That right now I don't really want to think about. But yeah, that dialogue's going to have to be open and carry on.
Yeah. What do you think that you have passed on any traits to your daughter yet that you can recognize? Things
Any
that
traits
she,
at this point?
yeah, things that she might be doing already that you're like, oh, that is so me.
Um,
Or is she just more like her mom?
No, well, music definitely. There's always music in the house, and definitely it resonates with her. Um, and it's not just kind of like, okay, there's whatever it is, and she's kind of having fun dancing. She knows what she likes,
Yeah.
and she knows what she doesn't like. She will get me to skip songs that she doesn't like, but and she got two, and I'm not talking about kind of kid songs. It's crazy. It's stuff that we listen to. And there's a couple of songs like within the opening two drum beats, she knows exactly what the song is, and she's just loses it. She starts like dancing like a maniac. So I definitely think kind of her mom and I, her mom, yeah, her mom and I both enjoy music, and I think that's one thing that's definitely it's always in the house, and I think it's something that she definitely picked up from us. And I mean, there'll be no doubt there'll be habits as well that she picks up. But right now, she's picked up a love of food as well. She's a good eater, and she eats everything. Like we've tried to introduce food as early as often, and she eats what we eat as of like the age of 1. She eats what we eat. We we're not kind of, okay, mommy and daddy are going to eat this, and you're going to have chicken fingers. And she's really curious about what's on our plate, so much so that we even have to dish up exactly from the same bowl, or she won't like it. And sometimes, we've tried to separate dishes because maybe I made a spicy version and a mild version, and she's curious and she notices these things. So definitely, I think an appreciation of food is something that we're passing down, which is also very important to us.
So, how do you express the love of your daughter to her?
Um, I mean, right now there's kind of the act of kind of hugs and kisses and all that kind of stuff, but half the time they just seem to bother her more than anything else. And you're trying to give her kisses, and she's like pushing your head away and all that kind of thing. But I think the thing that I try to do anyway is to give her give her time to just kind of hang out and play silly games with her, even though you're bored out of your head and you're running around the same corner and playing hide and seek for half an hour. It's the time and the time together. I think is for me anyway one of the ways that I show that you know there's this special bond between us.
Right. What do you think is the most amazing thing your daughter has taught you so far?
The most amazing thing that she has taught me,
Hmm.
um, patience.
That's a huge
I
one.
think it's a very it's not something that I necessarily used to be very good at or even am very good at right now. Um, but it's definitely something that they're going to test your patience, and there's going to be days where absolutely you just want to lose it, and you can't
Right.
because you've got to deal with the situation as it is being presented to you. So from that perspective, it's one of the things that also makes me, I think, better in some work situations, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I think probably patience. I mean, along with it, the one thing, there's this, it's an indescribable kind of level of concern, care, love, all kind of wrapped up into one kind of emotional tie to this child where they might be irritating you 1 second, but if they fall and they crack their head on something, or you get a phone call from daycare and it's something like your child can't walk anymore, she keeps stumbling and falling. Everything else just pales into insignificance, and you freak out because it's such a what the hell is that
Right.
sort of thing. So it's also kind of it's a level of concern and care and all that kind of thing that you don't know you have until it just springs itself up in you.
So, if you could tell some of those young men out there what they have to look forward to, what would you say fatherhood is for you in 3 words?
In what? In three
In
words?
3 words.
3 words. Um, challenging.
Hmm.
Um, it's rewarding,
Hmm.
and it's a responsibility.
Good one. Very good one. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight. I really enjoyed hearing your answers to my questions. I'm sure some may seem a bit obscure, but we're just trying to dig into the depth of where fathers are at these days with their daughters. When that relationship goes astray, it's very hard to get it back. And it's great to see that you are, putting an importance on that communication with your daughter already. And I hope it continues. And I hope that she continues being a good communicative daughter. We know that human beings, depending on what's going on in life, can be less communicative at times, but sounds like you've got an amazing base, and I know you have an amazing partner help raising her. So you and your wife have a lot to look forward to by the sounds of it, and I
Well,
know you
here's
will
hoping,
hunt.
and thanks for the opportunity to actually kind of think things through and think of them in I guess, a different perspective. So,
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's you're so busy being a parent that you forget you've made some great accomplishments, and I know myself, I think you're doing a great job. So I just want to let you know that I think you're a great dad.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're
Okay.
going to end up here, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.